Today, we're diving into an ancient text that, believe it or not, hides a surprisingly modern roadmap for life. Seriously, it's like a formula for living well, and it's simpler than you might think. Let's get into it. So let me just ask you this. What if a complete guide to a good life was all packed into a single sentence? I know, it sounds a little too good to be true, right? But that's exactly what the second chapter of the book of Proverbs offers up. And that's what makes this chapter so unique, so powerful. It's not just a random collection of wise sayings. No, it's one single, flowing thought, carefully built to show us how to go after wisdom and why it's so worth the effort. The entire chapter is built on this really simple but powerful piece of logic. It's an if-then statement. It literally says, if you do these specific things, then you will get these specific results. It's a crystal clear cause and effect formula for life. So that's exactly how we're going to break it down. First, we're going to look at the if part, the conditions, the stuff we have to do. And then we'll get to the good part, the then part, the incredible results that are promised if we do. All right, let's jump into the IF. Now, the key thing to get here is that finding wisdom isn't passive. It's not something that just happens to you while you're watching TV. The text frames it as a full-on active hunt. I mean, just look at the verbs being used here. Receive, lend your ear, call out, seek, search. None of those are things you can do sitting back on the couch. The message is just screaming at us. Getting wisdom takes real, focused effort. The metaphor here is just perfect. Wisdom is like buried treasure. You don't just trip over it by accident walking down the street. You have to want it. You have to dig for it. You have to search for it with everything you've got. And this quote from Dr. Konkel just hits the nail on the head. He says, wisdom can't just happen. You really, truly have to want it. It's an intentional act, not an accident. Okay, so if we put in all that work, if we do the digging, what's the payoff? What do we get? Well, that brings us to the then part of this whole formula, the two huge rewards that are promised. The text says you'll get two massive outcomes. First, you'll understand your vertical relationship, the one with God. And second, you'll understand your horizontal relationships, the ones with everybody else. It basically covers the two most fundamental parts of life. Now, that phrase, fear of the Lord, I know, it can sound a little weird, maybe even scary. But in Proverbs, it's not about being afraid. It's actually a cognitive idea. It means learning and truly understanding the fundamental principles of how the world works. And here's a cool little language fact that makes this so much clearer. The ancient Hebrew language didn't really have a specific word for mind. So when the text says heart, it's often talking about what we would call the mind. This whole book is about training your intellect, your ability to reason and to understand. So how does this wisdom play out in our day-to-day relationships? Well, to explain these big ideas like justice and fairness, Dr. Konkel tells this awesome personal story that gets right to it. And it all started with a simple question at the dinner table. So he really wanted a chainsaw. Their budget was tight, but he was always borrowing one to cut wood. He asks his wife, and she agrees. It seems like a done deal. But then, his little daughter just blurts it out, a raw, unfiltered cry for fairness. To her little mind, it just wasn't right. It wasn't fair that her dad would get two gifts when everyone else just got one. Things had to be equal. And that's the whole point, right? That story just perfectly captures it. A huge piece of wisdom is understanding what's right, what's just, and what's fair. It's about learning to apply that deep, innate sense of balance to the messy, complicated world we live in. So wisdom doesn't just give you good things, it also acts like a guardrail. It helps you see and steer clear of the big dangers that can pull you right off the path to a good life. And the text calls out two main threats. First, there's the wicked person, who tries to talk you into leaving the right way for a path that seems better but is actually destructive. And second, there's this figure called the foreign woman. Now, this is a super important point. The term foreign here has nothing to do with nationality. It's a metaphor. It refers to anyone, man or woman, who is foreign or a stranger to the covenant of faithfulness in a relationship. It's all about loyalty versus betrayal. And all of this, the whole formula, the ifs, the thens, the dangers to avoid, it all leads to a final stark choice. It boils down to two very different paths you can take in life. The contrast here couldn't be clearer. One path, the way of wisdom, leads to a good life, to really flourishing. The other path, the way of the wicked, leads to getting lost, to ruin, and, well, to perishing. Just like in Psalm 1, when you get right down to it, there are fundamentally only two ways to go. But here's the real kicker, the thing we have to remember. This isn't a test you take once and then you're done. Life is always changing. It's always throwing new stuff at us. The hunt for wisdom isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a journey you have to stay on, continuously. So, that brings this ancient roadmap right back to us, here and now. This isn't about some abstract idea. It's for today. The real question is, as your life keeps changing, what's the next decision? The one right in front of you today that demands this kind of active, persistent search for wisdom.